It was all smiles to the leaders of the world's leading developing economies: Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa.
The idea that the financial sector can be dishonest is often reinforced in pop culture. There hasn't been scientific evidence to support it until now. A Senate panel began hearings Thursday that include top executives from Morgan Stanley, Goldman Sachs, and JP Morgan Chase following a 2-year investigation into the alleged manipulation of commodities markets.
Remember those allegedly dodgy mortgages from Countrywide? Well, they are likely going to cost the Bank of America up to $17 billion to resolve.
Yet another huge money laundering scandal hits the British multinational banking group HSBC, this time in Argentina. The Federal Tax Office has uncovered scores of bogus transactions involving illegal assets and has filed a lawsuit against HSBC. Local political leaders are now criticizing the government for failure to prevent money laundering, which, according to the Financial Action Task Force, is spreading across the country.
The Swiss arm of HSBC, the second largest bank in the world, has been charged in France with illicit financial and banking practices. The scale of the allegations is simply staggering. Over the years 2006 and 2007, HSBC is accused of helping clients commit tax fraud in France in the amount of 181 billion euros.
The former head of the Icelandic bank, Landsbanki, has been sentenced to a 12-month jail term. 2 other of the bank's executives received 9-month sentences. The Landsbanki 3 were accused of manipulating the bank's share price by lending cash to investors on condition they purchase stock.
Citigroup is paying $7 billion to settle a federal investigation into subprime mortgages that helped bring about the financial crisis. Citi, along with other banks, packaged questionable loans into securities and sold them to investors. The settlement will pay $4 billion to state and federal authorities. $2.5 billion will be allotted to consumers.
Hi there, I'm Jared Howard.
And I'm Robert Nisbet.
Welcome to our look at banking in 2014 in the financial sector.
You're tuned to Video Radio, Radio Free Canada, independent media.
For an intelligent world that's taking a look at the headline on our Facebook group this week, 72 bankers have now jumped out of buildings, showed up, cacked off, and under suspicious circumstances.
But I was very happy to see in that opening clip that Iceland actually threw some bankers in jail.
I know. It's like you could actually do something about it. You know, actually make change. Prime Minister actually was in court in Iceland. Bankers go to jail. They sent out bounty hunters, too.
Yeah, they're still hunting some of them down.
Yeah, so it can be done. Don't question it. This is our look at 2014, and we're also taking a look at how paying fines kind of sweeps things under the rug.
But it makes it good for the Department of Justice. They collect a lot of money.
Good on them. Okay, part of the change. Let's check this out.
Bill, let's begin with the one thing bank CEOs are sure to remember for years to come: the record amount of fines and settlements and penalties that banks have paid. Eric Holder, the Attorney General, said just the other day that the DOJ had collected almost $25 billion in civil and criminal settlements from banks this year.
Which, of course, began in November of 2013
with JP Morgan.
$13 billion from JP Morgan. So I guess if you're the biggest sheriff in town and have the biggest, sort of arsenal of weaponry, you can, force Wall Street to pay these fines.
And it's not over. Morgan Stanley hit.
Absolutely not over.
This was kind of the year where it seemed like they finally got the guts, right? They finally got the guts. They went after the banks. And some are saying this is sort of the sea change this year in fines.
I don't see this as guts. I see this as something that benefits justice. It benefits the banks because they just pass that cost on to their shareholders. Justice gets to say, look at all the money we made and go to Congress. And the one thing we don't ever get is a real trial where we learn things about how the industry works.
That's exactly right. I completely agree with that. They're able, with these settlements, to sweep under the rug the real details of what went wrong.
Yeah.
And of course there's no accountability whatsoever. So basically you have your shareholders paying these big fines. As we know, Jamie Dimon got a big raise in early 2014 for settling with the DOJ in 2013. And the stock has gone up. I mean, stocks generally have gone up. Wall Street stocks have gone up. So Wall Street shareholders are saying, we can deal with this easily, even though it's all coming out of their pockets.
It smacks of deals cooked up in dark rooms.
So the fact is, bankers are still getting away with nonsense. I talk extensively about the fact that they create money from nowhere. Throughout 2015, we're going to talk about the damaging results of a few people behind closed doors getting away with nonsense, and above all, just paying a fine? Why aren't these guys going to jail?
You mean it's a conspiracy that's cooked up in smoke-filled rooms?
No, don't say that.
No.
But they are smoke-filled conspiracy rooms. It's weird, but it's exactly the same as saying the same gas price at all the gas pumps, okay? You have to remember that they're presetting all of our prices, and right now, that is driving the economy right into the ground.
And another thing that could help push that economy completely over is the fact that Congress, in a last-minute spending bill to keep government open, had legislation put in by Citibank that would eviscerate any banking reforms that the administration tried to put through.
Now, if you take a look at the omnibus bills that are put through right here in Canada, well, it seems that the Americans do the same thing. They mix in a whole bunch of crap in a huge bill, and on page 595, oh, by the way, we're going to roll back really important legislation.
So check it out. Here's a look at it.
It's been 5 years since widely popular reforms came to Wall Street, meant to clean up a mess that helped cause 2008's financial crash.
On this vote, the yeas are 77.
But Saturday's midnight hour passage of a spending bill that avoids a government shutdown also rolled back key parts of the Dodd-Frank reform package, without any real debate and with a lot of help from Wall Street itself. Big banks have been trying to get this Wall Street-friendly amendment passed in some form for a couple years now, and this weekend's last-minute spending bill was a golden opportunity. This amendment pulls back regulation on several different types of trading, including the risky derivatives trading we heard so much about after the financial crash. But here's where it gets interesting. 70 lines of the 85-line bill reflect recommendations from Citigroup, which might be the most influential bank on Capitol Hill, and 2 crucial paragraphs were copied nearly word for word. Nobody wanted a government shutdown this year, so already technically past its deadline, the Senate did not have a lot of options late Saturday when it went to vote on the huge spending bill the Republican-controlled House sent over. That 1,600-page bill included the Citigroup amendment. So the amendment's opponents say this.
This provision that puts taxpayers right back on the hook for bailing out big banks.
You probably know this guy. If you're unfamiliar with Jamie Dimon, he's the president and CEO of another big bank, JP Morgan Chase. Dimon's support makes sense, but why was the president making calls to repeal a key part of his own signature financial reform law? Again, this is what happens when Congress procrastinates.
The president does not support that provision, but on balance, the president does believe that this compromise proposal is worthy of his support.
For Newsyam, Zach Toon.
So we take a look at finances throughout 2014. We see that things are going in the wrong direction. So I want you to take out some time, watch a few shows. Number 1, Capitalism, A Love Story. This is an awesome film. It's by Michael Moore, and it's out there and it fills you in on some of the rules and why things are going so wrong. There's a couple other films
Inside
too.
Job by Brave New Films is awesome.
Yeah, okay. Brave New Films. Check out a whole bunch of stuff on those guys. And also Dominic Frisby and his description of fiat lending, the way banks make money up from nowhere, the way that we're not really in charge of anything, and that it doesn't have to be this way. We need to get back to a stable currency situation. But, okay, take a look at what currency creates. Wall Street.
Wall Street. Now, Wall Street is writing legislation that gets passed that benefits Wall Street.
Yeah, how do they get in there writing the laws? It doesn't make much sense.
It's called campaign donations.
Oh, yes. Can you say lobbyist? However, when you get into the interior of the system, the way the system actually works, you realize things aren't exactly the way they look.
And recently, a Canadian entrepreneur who went down to Wall Street discovered a flaw in the system and how it was being exploited, and he tried to do something about it. Check this out.
Wall Street, the financial engine of the global economy. Few outsiders get big jobs here, and even fewer dare to challenge its culture. But meet someone who did. It's not just that Brad Katsuyama is Canadian that makes his story so intriguing, but the boldness of his challenge after discovering something strange going on in the stock markets. When Brad went onto his computer to execute a trade, say, trying to buy 100,000 shares of ABC Company, suddenly only a fraction of those shares would be available at the price that had been displayed. What Brad found out was that large, high-frequency trading operations had paid to have their computers physically located inside the stock exchange, sometimes just a couple of feet from the stock exchange computer, giving them a tiny but critical advantage. He discovered a technique known as front-running, so Brad started building a workaround and ended up being profiled in the bestseller Flash Boy. There was a segment on 60 Minutes.
We're investing in technology and building solutions.
And then testimony before the U.S. Senate, where Brad's exposure of electronic front-running made him powerful enemies on Wall Street. But he wasn't done yet.
So what do you do if you find yourself trading stocks in a system where others have an inherent advantage? What could you do to improve your position? How about starting up your own stock exchange?
Brad's new exchange, IEX, uses special technology to eliminate electronic front-running, and investors are embracing it with impressive growth in less than a couple of years. For Brad, who credits a lot of his success to his Canadian upbringing, there's no conflict between helping others and succeeding yourself. Paul Johnson, Global News, New York City.
So it's an exciting world, and the boringest of all worlds, a bank.
Yes, don't they call economics a sad science?
Yes.
Something like that.
I know.
But it's not
science. It's not a science. They make it up out of nowhere. Everything from the rules and the guidelines to the way that you can benefit off of it. The only crime here is that people aren't told what's going on. People weren't told what happened in the G20.
No, they weren't. Okay. No media mentioned the fact that the Cyprus model for bailing in the banks was put in place across the board. It was rubber stamped at G20.
Yeah, so if you're in a G20 country, that means that if a bunch of bankers decide to, not even if there's a reason, if they just decide to, they can close down and seize your bank account to justify their made-up-from-nowhere bank ledgers.
It's great when you go to the casino with somebody else's money.
Yes, that's why we're standing here. I'm Darren Howard.
And I'm Robert Nisbet.
This is your look at 2014, and we're taking a look at the monetary system throughout 2015 and the way that it can be changed in a positive way.
But coming up in our next segment, we'll be talking about police brutality, militarization, and the protests that evolve from those.
Remember, we have a stabilization problem in society, and things like the monetary system that you have no input on, and the legal system that you have no input on are destabilizing the current run that we've got, and that's got to change.
So thanks for putting up with us in our 2014 wrap-up.
Yes, it was really good. And you know what? You don't have to tolerate us that much. You can always put a thumb over the side of the thing so that you can't see us. That's why I make the screen small. I don't want to be a talking head. I want to be on radio free. Thanks for tuning in.
We'll keep telling you the truth
as long as they keep lying.
One official here told me it might take as long as 2 years before this new development bank actually starts lending.
But are the BRICS countries, economically as powerful as they are, ready for such a massive multilateral undertaking? Not everyone's convinced. The BRICS leaders disagree and see the new bank as leverage against what they call the Washington-centric model of international lending. Economic and political dominance, something these nations want more of, now opening their wallets to do it. It was all smiles for the leaders of the world's leading developing economies, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, the so-called BRICS alliance, announcing they had agreed to start a new development bank. And the new bank will have plenty of cash at its disposal.
This is a historic decision to create a development bank of large scale, because the total authorized capital may go to 100 billion. The first stage, $50 billion. We are talking about a large-scale institution that will be able to operate, let's say, $500 billion in new credit.
Brazilian President Dilma Rousseff said that the creation of this bank, in her words, is a sign of the times. Certainly the BRICS countries overcame great challenges over the years to finally reach this point, to be able to announce it, but now the hard part, actually implementing it. One official here told me it might take as long as 2 years